Wine. It's simply crushed and fermented grapes. The variations in the stories are what make it so fascinating. Vineyard practices like trellising methods, dry farming or irrigating, fertilizing, cover crops, biodynamic practices, head pruning, using sheep and goats and insectiaries. There are so many varieties of grapes, and then different clones and different rootstocks. The variations in wine are beyond comprehension, and the stories behind the wines are as lush and beautiful as the wines themselves. Our goal at Crush Grape Chronicles is to explore and chronicle the grape, its many stories, and its journey from dirt to glass.
I have to admit, the first thing I really wanted to talk to you about was about the new AVA, but I'd love to hear some about the property and everything first.
Okay.
Kind of get me a little more familiarized with it, because the estate looks beautiful. I mean, obviously the estate has been here for a while by those trees along the drive.
Yep,
So,
and they date it. I guess it was 1805.
wow.
A fellow who was an attorney, worked for copper company in Montana, got a job as an attorney for the railroad in Portland, so he moved out here, bought this parcel, and it reminded him of his home in Montana, so he called it Montana in Oregon, or Montinore.
Gotcha.
So that was the original ranch name. And there's some irony in that I'll get into. But he planted these trees. These are big leaf maples, which are indigenous to the northern coast, And this way, this was the east entrance, and that was the north entrance. It makes a really nice, really nice entrance.
Yeah.
And he built that house there. John Forbes was his name. And he lived there for a long time, a couple generations, and then eventually the Grahams, who were lumber people, bought the house in the 60s and expanded it, raised their kids there, and then they had been renting out the fields to, this had been a hazelnut farm, a cattle ranch, it had been a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And they had been renting out these lower fields to a vegetable grower, and he had just gotten all of his starts put out, everything all ready to go, and Mount St. Helens blew, covered the whole place with about 4 inches of ash, killed all of the vegetables, and he went belly up. So the Grahams had we need to work this farm somehow, although they weren't necessarily farmers, they were lumber people, but they had a survey done, ag survey, and by both UC Davis and OSU, and it came up great location for wine grapes. So they planted a lot of wine grapes, 300 some odd acres, maybe 350 or something crazy like that. All different varieties just to see what was going to go on. Built this wine, then got this grand plan, built this winery. This was supposed to be phase 1 of 3 phases. They had very big, very big plans, But like so many people who start in the wine business, they think all about production, and the marketing part is, just out there. We'll sell it when we make it, but it's really the hardest part.
Yeah.
So anyway, the winery was established. The first grapes came off here, and it was planted in 82 and 83, and then first grapes came off in 87. And that was the first vintage. And then the first vintage out of this building was the 90 vintage. And I came on as a consultant to them. I had found out about them. At the time, I owned a winery in the East Coast, and I also was vice president of a big distributorship back east. And my daughters were in college in Portland, and I came out and I started checking out Oregon wine. And so I started bringing Montinore back to the East Coast, and I had no idea that we were the largest customer because I built it up in our market. And so when I left that other company, they asked me if I'd work for them here. So that was in 98, and then eventually I ended up becoming president of the winery, but still had my winery on the East Coast, so I was flying back and forth every week. And then in 2005, they wanted to retire, and their kids didn't want to have anything to do with it. And they asked me if I would buy I was interested in buying Montinore, which I was. So I sold everything I own. I own a couple farms and a little winery on the East Coast. Sold that, moved out here at the end of 2005, lock, stock, and barrel. I'd been half living here anyway, and I really loved the project. So that's how that all started.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you guys, you're growing all organically and biodynamically.
Yeah.
You're like 100% certified in both
Yeah.
for all your vineyard here.
Yeah.
And it's a estate vineyard. How many acres is now with the estate?
Well, right now we're down to about 200 because we had phylloxera, early on.
Gotcha.
Everybody planted on their own roots.
Mm-hmm.
So we had almost all own rooted except for 20 acres. And so it's about 200, and we culled out some places that they just weren't as good as we wanted, We have 200 here, and then we have another vineyard in the Yamhill Carlton AVA,
Right. Gotcha.
30-acre vineyard there. And then we have another long-term lease on a 20-acre vineyard in Chehalem Mountain. So we're farming altogether 250 acres, yeah.
Which is kind of cool because with the starting of the AVA here,
Yeah.
you can really do some comparisons to the other
Exactly,
AVAs,
exactly.
which is great. So tell me, I know obviously you guys are considered Willamette Valley out here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it makes it not, you're like right across from all these other
Yeah.
nested AVAs.
Yeah.
But what sets it apart out here and what got you started? Because you're really one of the instigators
Yeah.
of this whole
Yeah.
AVA project.
I established an AVA in the early 80s back on the East Coast of my old winery, so I understood the process.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and actually, when Dave Adelsheim was involved in establishing Chehalem Mountain, he called me up. He said, you're just a half a mile, and I want to offer you the courtesy of, having some input in this. And I said, well, Dave, we're not on Chehalem Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
We're very different set of circumstances here, and I don't think we should be part of it. So we didn't enter the Chehalem AVA. I always felt like if you're going to do an AVA, it bothered me when people would do them and sort of set the boundaries for political reasons rather than fact.
Yeah.
I don't consider politics fact. Most of it comes and goes, So, and I can show you on the map what's unique about this. So, and that might be easier if I show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that would be
There's
great.
a map right on the other side of that wall.
Perfect.